remembers the Roman Empire as an engine of cold, calculated logic, a world governed by stoic law and precise architecture. Yet for 4 years, the absolute ruler of this civilization was a living nightmare. We are left with records of a leader who declared war on the ocean, ordering his legions to march to the shoreline, stab the waves with their swords. He demanded his own likeness be carved onto the bodies of sacred statues, effectively rewriting religious tradition by force. Perhaps most infamously, he drafted the official paperwork to appoint his favorite horse as a high-ranking government council. Dismissing these acts as a historical glitch ignores the more grounded, technical horror of the situation. This was a case study in what happens when a superpower's resources are placed behind the whims of a single, fractured mind with absolute authority. The tragedy is that the early months of Caligula's reign were defined by stability. He began his rule as a rational, beloved leader, known for lowering taxes and repealing the paranoid treason trials of his predecessor. In 37 AD, a near-fatal illness struck the emperor. Modern medical historians suspect he suffered from encephalitis, an acute inflammation of the brain, or severe lead poisoning from the Roman water system. When Caligula emerged from the fever, his brain chemistry was altered. The illness short-circuited his prefrontal cortex, the hub responsible for empathy and impulse control. This breakdown manifested immediately in the Roman public treasury, liquidating vast reserves at impossible velocity to fund erratic projects. He ordered the construction of a 2-mile-long floating bridge across the Bay of Baiae. He used hundreds of ships as a foundation, paving over the ocean with dirt and stone just so he could ride his force across the water and defy a prophecy. This was the moment where a biological brain injury became imperial law. Caligula had learned that he could use absurdity as a tool for total dominance. Under Caligula, madness functioned as a psychological contagion. It forced the Roman elite into a state of constant, disorienting fear that permeated the highest levels of government. He specialized in the public humiliation of his peers. He would force senior, robed senators to run for miles alongside his chariot, testing their physical endurance and their loyalty simultaneously. His banquets became theaters of psychological torture. He reportedly slept with the wives of high-ranking aristocrats, then returned to the dinner table to publicly rate their performances in front of their husbands. These were not random acts. They were part of a systematic strategy to dismantle human agency. By forcing the elite to applaud his most bizarre behaviors, he ensured they remained complicit in their own degradation. The Senate was stripped of its objective purpose. Survival required the ruling class to abandon their own sanity and mirror the shifting, volatile moods of the emperor. There is another possibility to consider. Caligula may not have been entirely lost to delusion, but rather the only person who saw the Roman system for what it had become, a total autocracy. Elevating his horse, Incitatus, to a high political office functioned as a cynical, weaponized joke. It was a direct insult to the politicians of Rome. He was demonstrating that their ancient laws, their titles, and their traditions were hollow. If an animal could occupy their seat of power and they still bowed to the throne, then their status was entirely dependent on his whim. Absolute power removes the friction of logic. When a ruler faces no consequences and no opposition, they gain the ability to author reality itself. The most enduring legacy of his reign was the realization that if no one has the power to stop you, the very concept of madness loses its meaning. Caligula's reality-bending experiment lasted 4 years. It ended abruptly in a dark palace corridor, where his own bodyguards, pushed to the point of psychological exhaustion, finally assassinated him. His death did not fix the underlying vulnerability he exposed. He left behind proof that even the most sophisticated empire is susceptible to the internal condition of its leader. All societies and legal systems are held together by a shared agreement to act rationally. When that agreement is discarded by the person at the top, the entire structure begins to fracture. Foreign armies spent centuries trying to conquer Rome, yet it took only a few years for an internal breakdown to bring the state to the brink of collapse. This shifts the focus from ancient history to the mechanics of modern power. If you were granted absolute power tomorrow, if every whim became law and no one could question your logic, are you certain your own mind would remain unchanged? Would you use that power to build a better world? Or would you eventually demand that the world bow to your own illusions? Caligula's reign remains a reminder that the systems we rely on to manage millions are only as stable as the minds of the people who lead them. To explore more of these historical anomalies and the psychology behind them, subscribe and step into the shadows. This is Shadow Theory.